My name is Arya, 36 years old, a single mom living in Denver, Colorado. My husband Thomas passed away from heart disease 3 years ago. Since then, everything in my life has revolved around my 2 kids, 12-year-old Mason and 9-year-old Ella. They are my entire world. I never tried to act strong in front of others. But every night, after my kids fell asleep, I quietly faced the shattered pieces of a life I couldn't glue back together. Loneliness crept into every meal, every unfinished dream. I used to think I'd never open my heart again. Until the day I met Chase. Chase, 33, was someone I met at a small gathering hosted by friends in the suburbs. He had bright eyes, a calm smile, and the way he asked if I wanted to try his newly mixed cocktail made me feel like a 20-something girl experiencing butterflies for the first time again. Silly, I know, but that feeling had been absent from my life for far too long. Chase wasn't the aggressive type. He knew how to listen, how to distract me from my daily exhaustion with funny stories about his work at the interior design firm where he worked. I thought, maybe, for the first time in years, I could allow myself to think about the future, instead of just surviving the present. At first, Chase showed more interest in Mason and Ella than I had expected. He bought them gifts, took them to the park, even volunteered to attend school events. Mason stayed cautious. He was always a thoughtful, mature kid for his age. But Ella? She fell for the spontaneous ice cream trips and Chase's funny stories almost instantly. I told myself this might be a new beginning. Chase told me he admired how I carried everything on my own, that he wanted to be the one to share that burden with me. It sounded beautiful. But looking back now, I realized I was too quick to trust those sweet words. After dating for over 8 months, Chase suggested we make our relationship official. He started staying over at my house more often, especially on weekends. I thought we were both adjusting to this new chapter. But there were moments when I caught him eyeing my old house, as if silently evaluating every detail. Comments like, "It's a bit cramped here," or "The kitchen could use an update," started slipping out. Back then, I assumed he just wanted to help make things better. I was so naive. He also started mentioning his sister Madison more often. An unemployed woman temporarily staying at their mother's place in Dallas. Chase would sigh about her, saying she was lost and needed someone to reach out and help her. I listened, sympathized, and thought those were just normal conversations between a couple. I thought I was being cautious, but the truth is I allowed myself to be blinded. In those lonely nights I told myself maybe I deserved to be happy again, but I didn't see that the happiness I was clinging to might just be a trap I was willingly stepping into. Chase had a way of making everything feel like a perfect dream. He didn't just charm me, he slowly wove himself into Mason and Ella's world. Those evenings when the 3 of them played board games in the living room, their laughter drowned out the wind rustling outside. I sat there watching, thinking, I was building a new family. Chase knew exactly when and where to show concern. He spent hours helping Mason with tough math homework, or took Ella to the library to hunt for old books she adored. He even once bought me a weekend spa voucher, telling me to relax while he watched the kids. And I, foolishly, believed he truly wanted to be part of our fragile little family. What started as weekend visits turned into him practically living in my house. His sleepover bags, toothbrush, even his dress shirts gradually occupied space in the bathroom and the closet. He told me this house felt like home to him, like the safe place he'd always searched for. Hearing those words made my heart soften, as if I truly was the lucky one after all the storms. But Chase didn't just talk about the present. He painted dazzling pictures of the future we'd built together. Trips to Colorado Springs, Christmases gathered around a giant tree, peaceful nights in the lakeside cabin he always said he dreamed of owning. Chase painted a world I'd never dared to imagine. And he spoke as if Mason, Ella, and I were already part of it. I almost believed in that fantasy until the dark corners began creeping in, seeping through the perfect facade Chase wore. It started with how he brought up the house more often. Chase would walk around, tapping on the walls, shaking his head, criticizing the old floors, the outdated kitchen, saying it wasn't fit for a modern family. He once laughed, pointing at my worn-out couch, joking it would make any guest want to run away at first sight. I brushed it off, telling myself he just wanted to help me improve the living space. But those jokes turned into concrete suggestions. Chase brought home furniture catalogs, pointing at items, insisting I should change, update, refresh. He said it was the first step toward the new life we were building together. I reluctantly agreed to a few minor changes. Curtains, a couple of wall paintings. But Chase didn't stop there. One evening he sat down beside me, his eyes filled with concern, but his tone carried an invisible pressure. "I think we need to seriously talk about buying a new house, Arya. This place, it's too small, too old. And if we truly want to give Mason and Ella a better environment, I've been looking at some new neighborhoods with great schools, safe parks, friendly neighbors." I stayed silent, my chest tightened. This old house, though worn and flawed, was where my memories with Mason and Ella lived. Thomas had built every corner of it with his own hands. I couldn't imagine leaving it behind just because Chase thought it was beneath us. I tried to answer gently, "Chase, you know this is our home, my kids grew up here. I don't think just because—" He cut me off, his smile still there but now sharpened like a blade. "Arya, sometimes we have to step out of our comfort zone if we want something better." I swallowed my protests. For the first time since we started dating, I felt myself being pushed behind a wall Chase had quietly built between us. I'd told myself maybe he was just eager. Maybe he just cared about our future. But deep down I began to feel an unsettling void I couldn't name. Mason also sensed the change. My son was no longer excited when Chase stayed over. He withdrew, became quieter. And Ella, though still clinging to Chase, no longer had that carefree sparkle in her eyes. How much longer could I ignore that feeling? I didn't know. But what I knew for sure was that the peaceful days of just the three of us had started to show cracks I was too afraid to face. In the following weeks, Chase's shift became more obvious. Gone were the subtle suggestions about home improvements. Now he spoke as if he already owned the place. One morning I came home from work to find he had hired contractors to measure the living room. "I think we can knock down this wall to open up the space. And the kitchen? We should totally redo it. Scandinavian modern style, Arya. You'll see the difference immediately." Chase pointed at the blueprint he had prepared, his smirk full of self-satisfaction. I stared at the paper in his hand, every cold line slicing into my memories like a knife. That wall was where Thomas had built Mason's first bookshelves. That kitchen was where Ella and I had baked batches of messy cookies together. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. "Chase, this is my house, my kids' house. If we're going to change anything, the least you can do is talk to me and the kids first." He raised an eyebrow, the smile still on his lips, but his tone dipped into something darker. "I thought I was helping you let go of the past. You should be thanking me." His words choked me. I wasn't used to this kind of pressure, but under his cold gaze I stepped back. Maybe I'd been silent for too long since Thomas died, used to swallowing discomfort just to keep things calm for the kids. But Chase didn't stop at the house. He started slyly bringing up the idea of having more kids, little comments here and there, baby pictures accidentally left open on his phone. One evening he sat next to me, his arm wrapped lightly around my shoulders. "Arya, have you thought about giving Ella a little sibling? I want a baby that's truly ours." I turned to him, trying to keep my voice steady. "Chase, 2 kids are enough for me. I'm past the age of dreaming about pink cribs." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it anymore. "Are you sure it's really about you, or is it because you don't want anything new intruding into your little world with the kids?" I didn't answer. Maybe, in part, he was right. I was scared to lose the fragile balance my kids and I had built. But deep down, I knew Chase didn't care about those feelings. He wanted to stake his claim, to stamp his mark on every corner of my life. I also noticed how his behavior toward Mason and Ella changed. Where he used to be patient and gentle, now he frowned when Mason left toys in the living room. He openly showed his annoyance when Ella played with paint and spilled it on the kitchen floor. "I'm just trying to teach them some discipline, Arya," he told me when I tried to gently bring it up. "They need to understand boundaries." But what he was doing wasn't parenting, I knew that. It was about shrinking their space, pushing them out of their own safe zone. Mason started avoiding Chase, even asking to sleep over at friends' houses on weekends. Ella laughed less, and when she did, her eyes silently searched mine for answers I wasn't ready to face. I asked myself how long I'd let Chase go this far. But every time he wrapped me in those carefully calculated embraces, whispering about the perfect future he had planned for us, I let myself believe maybe it was just a hard phase of blending two lives together. I told myself if I pushed back, everything might shatter. But deep inside I knew some things, if you don't confront them early, might never be fixable. I thought things couldn't get worse. Until Madison showed up. Madison. Chase's sister. The name I had only heard in passing during his half-hearted stories. She was unemployed, living with their aging mother in Dallas, tangled in a web of personal financial scandals. Chase used to sigh, saying she was lost, that he was the only one in the family willing to reach out and help her. Back then I just stayed silent, seeing it as a sad story that had nothing to do with me. But I was wrong. Madison wasn't just some story shared at a bar among adults pretending to be compassionate. She showed up at my house in flesh and blood, dragging her suitcase behind her, her face pale, eyes hollow yet defiant. And Chase, as if he had been waiting for this very moment, smiled with satisfaction when I opened the door, frozen in place. "Surprise, Arya," Chase said casually. "Madison will be staying here for a while." I looked at him, then at Madison, who shamelessly dropped her suitcase onto the couch, completely taking over the spot where Mason usually sat to read. A wave of discomfort rose to my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Chase, we never discussed this." "Come on, Arya," he pulled me aside, his voice dropping to a whisper. "She has no one else. My mom's sick and I can't let my sister end up on the street. You know I'm all about family." I looked deep into his eyes. Those eyes that once held warmth when he embraced me during lonely nights. Now, there was only brazen entitlement. I swallowed my frustration. "So, how long is Madison planning to stay?" Chase shrugged, as if it wasn't worth discussing. "Just a few months. Until she finds a job and gets on her feet? I know you're generous. The kids will understand, eventually. Chase, this is my children's home." He chuckled softly, his tone dripping with mockery. "You act like all this old stuff is sacred, Arya. You need to learn to adapt. The kids will have new opportunities. In fact, I've been thinking they should experience boarding school. Do you know how amazing the top schools in Vermont are?" I froze. "You're saying, send Mason and Ella away?" Chase nodded seriously, like he was pitching a brilliant idea. "Arya, look at them. They need to learn independence. They've been leaning on you for too long, and you could use some space for yourself, too. Boarding school would be for their future." I was speechless. What he was suggesting wasn't just an idea. It was a direct blow to my family, to the safe world I had fought to preserve after Thomas passed. Madison stood there watching me with a smug half-smile. I knew she heard every word but didn't even bother to hide her satisfaction. She wanted to occupy the space that rightfully belonged to my kids. That night, I sat silently in Mason's room, watching my son sleep, his hands clutching his father's old worn book. I knew clearly, if I agreed, I wouldn't just be sending them to school far away. I'd be pushing them out of the home they called theirs, making room for strangers with bottomless greed. I sat in the darkness, listening to Madison laughing downstairs, Chase pouring wine as if this was already his territory, and I knew the real storm was only just beginning. I had thought Madison would eventually feel the discomfort and leave on her own, but I was completely wrong. Not only did she refuse to leave, but she also started meddling in things that were none of her business. The breaking point came when Mason asked me one Tuesday night, "Mom, is it true that Ella and I have to go to boarding school?" That question pierced through my heart like an icy dagger. I set my book down and looked into his eyes, those eyes that always reminded me of Thomas, now filled with uncertainty. "Who told you that?" My voice dropped, cold and unfamiliar even to me. Mason hesitated, avoiding my gaze. "Uncle Chase said boarding school would be good for us. He said, you'd have more time for yourself if you didn't have to take care of us all the time." I stood up abruptly, my heart pounding like a drum. Chase had said that behind my back? To my children? That night, after Mason and Ella were asleep, I walked into the living room where Chase and Madison were casually drinking wine, discussing Madison's upcoming trip to Texas for some so-called job fair. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Chase, can you explain to me exactly what's going on here?" He raised an eyebrow, his face indifferent. "What do you mean?" "I mean you talking to my kids about boarding school behind my back." I tried to stay calm, but each word felt like it was laced with the fury I could no longer suppress. Chase sighed, as if he were dealing with an unreasonable woman. "Arya, I'm just talking about better options for the kids. You should look at the bigger picture." "Bigger picture?" I scoffed. "You have no right to talk to my kids about anything without my permission." He set his wine glass down, leaning his hands on the table, his eyes turning ice cold. "Arya, I think it's time we make a choice. Either you move forward with me, or you stay stuck in this tiny world of yours, clinging to two kids holding you back." Madison giggled softly, her tone dripping with disdain. "Honestly, Chase is just trying to help you break free from your little pity bubble, Arya. You should be grateful." I looked at them. Two strangers sitting there, acting like they had the right to decide the future of me and my children. The rage rose. And this time, I didn't swallow it back. "You said choice? Fine, Chase, listen carefully. I choose my children. And if you think I'll kick them out of their home to make room for your failed sister, you're dreaming in broad daylight." Chase clenched his jaw, his voice hissing through his teeth. "If you don't change, Arya, then this is the end of us." "Then let it end," I said, my voice low but firm. "I'll call off the wedding. I'm taking back this house for me and my kids, and I don't need any man who expects me to trade my children for some twisted version of love." Madison shot up, her eyes wide with fury. "You'll regret this, Arya." I stared her down. "You're wrong, Madison. The ones who will regret it are you two." That night I packed all of Chase's things and left them outside the door, no explanations needed. I sent him a single text. "It's really over, Chase." I didn't cry. I didn't feel like a failure. I just felt an odd sense of relief. In that quiet night, for the first time in months, I could finally take a deep breath without suffocating. I didn't know how much trouble was still waiting ahead, but I knew one thing for sure. This time, I would protect my kids at all costs. I thought slamming the door on Chase and Madison would end the nightmare. But I was naive. Just 3 days after I sent that text, Chase reached out. No apology, no remorse. Instead, he coldly listed all the wedding expenses he claimed to have paid: the venue deposit, photography, even the wedding dress I tried on. Which, by the way, I had paid for myself. "I expect full reimbursement," Chase texted, as if he were sending an invoice. "You're the one who called off the wedding, Arya. You ruined both our futures." I gripped my phone tightly. I knew Chase's type. He wasn't going to stop at just texts. And, as I feared, the next day Madison jumped into the circus. She called me, her voice shrill and laced with anger. "You think you can throw my brother out like that and get away with it? You owe our family an apology for wasting our time." I hung up on her without hesitation. But the drama didn't end there. Chase began spreading his twisted version of our story all over social media, painting me as the selfish, ungrateful woman who heartlessly kicked him and his sister out just because I refused to open my heart to a new family. He wrote long-winded posts about disappointment in love, about a mother who won't let her children grow up, about a woman who never knows how to sacrifice. Messages from strangers started pouring in, full of insults and accusations that I couldn't even keep up with. One of Chase's old friends, someone I only met once at our engagement party, called me directly, saying I was selfish, that I was destroying the life of the best man I'd ever have. I bit my tongue, keeping myself from screaming back. They didn't know the truth, and I didn't feel the need to explain myself to people who only heard his side of the story. But what kept me up at night wasn't the texts or the random calls. It was Madison. She started leaving anonymous notes at my door. Handwritten scraps, sometimes with lines like, "You'll regret this," or veiled threats. I knew it was her. Only Madison would stoop to such childish games. And then Chase took things to the next level. I received an email from a small law firm in Denver, a formal demand to repay all the wedding expenses, with an amount I knew was inflated 3 times the actual cost. Chase didn't just want his money back, he wanted to destroy me financially and ruin my reputation. I sat in my office, staring at the legal letter, my heart ice cold. I knew I needed to respond rationally. I sent back a formal reply, attaching all the receipts I had paid, listing the non-refundable deposits we had both agreed on from the start. I knew the law was on my side. But I also knew Chase didn't care about the law. He wanted to play dirty. Mason and Ella didn't know the details, but they could feel the heavy air in the house. One night, Ella hugged me and whispered, "Mom, don't be sad anymore. You don't need anyone but us." Her words soothed the storm brewing inside me. I hugged Ella tightly, whispering back, but deep down I knew the real storm was just getting started. Proof came just 2 days later when Chase sent me one last text, a short but chilling message. "Just wait, Arya, this is only the beginning." I looked at the screen, a strange calm washing over me. I knew what he was capable of next. And I knew this time, I wouldn't back down. I had spent too long enduring, and I was done putting up with people who disrespected me and my children. I thought Madison would back off once I firmly shut every door in her face, and Chase's. But no. She was the kind of person who only got more aggressive when rejected. The anonymous threats, the taunting messages kept coming, laced with the kind of cheap mockery only Madison could come up with. I had almost prepared myself for the idea that Madison would haunt me and my children forever, until everything turned around in a way I never expected. The first message came from an old friend of Chase's, someone I barely remembered ever speaking to. In the message, he asked if I had heard what happened to Madison. I was confused and replied briefly, "What happened?" She disappeared, along with all the money Chase sent her. I froze. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Madison? She took her own brother's money? Before I could process it, more messages and calls poured in. Bits of gossip and fragmented stories slowly pieced together a complete and brutal picture. Madison had quietly transferred all the money Chase had scraped together for the wedding, even the money he borrowed from shady lenders to fund their new life, into her own account, then vanished without a trace. No one knew where she went, no one could find any sign of her on social media. The phone number she used to contact everyone had been disconnected. I stood frozen in the kitchen, clutching my phone, a wave of disbelief mixed with a bitter smile. In the end, Madison showed her true colors. She never cared about Chase, let alone his family. To her, everything was just another resource to drain, use up, and discard. Chase completely fell apart. He started sending me desperate messages. No more threats, no more bitterness. His tone now was pure begging, pleading. "Arya, Madison tricked me. She took everything. Do you know where she is? I have nothing left." I read the messages in silence. I didn't reply. I owed Chase nothing. He had led himself into that hole. I was merely a bystander, watching a man who once thought he was in control now become a victim of his own flesh and blood. Those who once sided with him now turned their backs without mercy. Mutual friends, the ones who cheered for the wedding I had canceled, now whispered behind his back, mocking his stupidity for blindly trusting his perfect little sister. I heard Chase lost his job over the debt scandal. People in the community began to avoid him, not wanting to be dragged into the mess he created. I knew he deserved everything that was happening to him, but I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Mason and Ella didn't know the details. I shielded them from all that chaos. I just wanted our home to return to the peaceful place it used to be. No arguments, no intruders, no fear of losing everything we cherished. A week later, Chase showed up at my doorstep on a gray, rainy afternoon. I stood behind the barely cracked door, looking at him, his hair disheveled, eyes vacant, clothes rumpled like he had just woken up from a long nightmare. "Arya, I'm sorry. I need your help." I said nothing. I didn't open the door any wider. I let him stand under the cold porch, listening to the rain pounding on the tin roof, like sentences I didn't need to speak aloud. "I have no one else." I kept my tone calm. "That's right, Chase, because you destroyed everything you had." He lowered his head, silent for a moment, then turned and walked away. I closed the door behind him, feeling nothing. I didn't know where Madison was hiding, and honestly, I didn't care. They could drown in their own swamp. As for me, I had my house, my 2 kids, whom I loved more than anything, and a simple, steady life no one could take away from me. 3 weeks after Chase vanished from my life like a cold gust of wind, Madison showed up at my door, on a night when Denver was colder than usual. She looked worse than ever, her blonde hair a tangled mess, her face gaunt and makeup-free, her heavy coat caked in dirt like she had been wandering the streets for a week straight. I looked at her through the security door. Ella stood quietly behind me. I signaled for her to go upstairs. Madison spoke first, her voice trembling, stripped of all arrogance. Arya, I need help. I made a mistake. Chase, he won't listen to me. I've lost everything. I crossed my arms leaning against the doorframe. Madison, I don't understand. What did you lose? Money? Or your fake persona? She swallowed hard, eyes pleading. I have nowhere to go. I have no money, no friends, no family. Chase cut me off. Everyone turned their backs on me. I only have you. I let out a cold laugh. You think I'd take you in after everything you did to me and my kids? You destroyed my family, betrayed your own brother, and now? You want me to feel sorry for you? Madison shrank back, tears filling her eyes. But I didn't waver. I had wavered too many times before. That's how I let her into my world in the first place. You chose your path, Madison. Now you get to live with the consequences. She choked up, taking a step closer as if hoping I'd change my mind. Arya, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. I have no one left. That's right. I cut her off, my voice calmer than ever. You have no one, and you deserve it. I closed the door without looking back. I stood still in the silence, listening to her staggering footsteps fade into the night. I didn't know where she would go, didn't know what she would do next. But I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the woman others could trample over. The next day, I changed all the locks on the house, even the security code was updated. I left no room for the past to creep back in. Things slowly quieted down. Social media grew silent. Those who once blindly followed Chase's version of the story gradually stopped mentioning me. Some even began to realize the truth. But I didn't care for their late apologies or sympathy. All I wanted was peace. Mason and Ella went back to being carefree kids, chatting excitedly about their upcoming spring camping trip at school. I sat on the porch, watching them play under the golden sunlight, feeling as if I had just walked out of the fiercest storm of my life. I heard Madison had been wandering from place to place, clinging to anyone willing to listen to the tragic story she fabricated. But this time no one cared anymore. She became a shadow of herself, a pathetic ghost people only mentioned with sighs and contempt. No one believed Madison anymore, and no one believed Chase either. I heard rumors he was fired from his job over the financial scandal tied to the payday loans he used for the canceled wedding. Those who once smiled and toasted to him now avoided him like a stain. I didn't care. In the end, those people were just spectators in a play I never invited them to be part of. I didn't bother listening to what happened to Chase or Madison anymore. They no longer belonged to my world. My world was now confined within my little house, with Mason, with Ella, and with me. Whole and complete, in the simplest way. I no longer spent my nights anxiously checking my phone, no more restless waiting for threatening messages or toxic mind games. Instead, I found peace in the small things. Afternoons fixing Mason's old bike, evenings baking cookies with Ella, laughing at the flour smudges on our faces. In those moments I realized I never needed anyone else to feel whole. We didn't need a new house. We didn't need anyone coming in to criticize our worn walls or mock our faded sofa. This was our home, and no one had the right to decide what it should look like. One night, while Ella was coloring a family picture, she looked up at me with her sweet voice. "Mom, our house, it'll always be just for us, right?" I smiled, gently brushing her soft hair. I didn't need to say anything. I let my actions speak for themselves. I knew that after everything, the only thing I needed to protect was my children. Not my reputation, not the image of a perfect mother in others' eyes. As long as my kids grew up surrounded by love and absolute safety, I knew I had done right. I no longer resented the past. Madison, Chase, those who once tried to step into my life, were now nothing more than distant names, expensive lessons I would never forget. I didn't need to declare that I was stronger, wiser, every peaceful day was proof enough. And I didn't need anyone to validate it. Mason's innocent gaze, Ella's smile, that was all I needed. Every morning, I brewed coffee, opened the windows, letting the sunlight pour in. I taught my kids to cherish the simplest things, just as I was relearning myself. We didn't have extravagant trips or lavish dinners, but we had each other, and to me that was everything. Life had taught me a lesson both simple and profound. Some people come into your life not to stay, but to teach you your limits, your core values that you must protect at all costs. I used to fear loneliness, but now I understood. Loneliness wasn't as scary as letting the wrong people into your world and watching them hurt the ones you love most. I framed the family picture Ella had finished, the three of us standing inside our little home, smiling brightly under the blue sky. No one else. No intruders. Just us. Life for me and my kids returned to its simple rhythm. Maybe to outsiders it looked like a series of monotonous days, school drop-offs, work, dinner, cleaning. But to me, every moment was part of healing. Every simple meal, every time Mason told me about his math test, every time Ella showed off her new drawing, they were all proof that our home remained intact. No one could break it again. There were nights when the kids had fallen asleep and I sat alone by the window, letting the darkness and silence soothe the lingering wounds. I thought of Chase, of Madison, of the people who once tried to invade my world with their scheming hands. But the only feeling I had left for them was emptiness. I wasn't angry anymore, because I understood the thing that exhausted me the most wasn't what they did. It was that I had once allowed them into my life, allowed them to touch the safe world of my children. Now I knew I owed no one an explanation for how I protected my family. I no longer had the illusion that anyone could replace Thomas. He was a wonderful father, and even though he's no longer here, I know I have to continue doing the rest of the work, protecting stability, safety, and peace for Mason and Ella. I used to fear that my children would grow up missing the presence of a father. But I realized the most important thing a mother like me could do is show them resilience, compassion, and how to stand firm against those who try to control or exploit their kindness. I taught Mason and Ella that boundaries aren't selfish, boundaries are self-respect. They're knowing how to say no when someone tries to invade your safety or that of the ones you love. They're about holding close the things that matter most and being ready to let go of what doesn't belong. Those lessons, I didn't need to preach them with words. I let life itself, my actions, be their guide. I didn't hide my mistakes from them either. I told Mason that I had trusted the wrong person. I told Ella that there are people who smile sweetly on the outside, but inside they're traps waiting to spring. I taught them how to recognize disguised control, how to listen to their gut, how to value their freedom without trading it for temporary comfort. No, I'm not perfect, but I know I'm doing what's right, and that's enough. One Sunday afternoon while the three of us were gardening, Mason suddenly asked me, "Mom, do you think you'll ever love someone else?" I looked up at my son. He was growing up faster than I realized. I smiled softly, not promising, not denying. "Mason, I think if that person truly respects me, respects you and Ella, loves even the little things in this house, maybe? But I'm not in a rush." Mason nodded, his face serious like a grown-up. "Because you don't need anyone to protect you anymore. You're strong enough already." I laughed, teasing him, "And because I have the best bike mechanic in Denver, too." Mason burst out laughing. Ella hugged me, chirping, "And the world's best cookie baker!" I looked at my two kids, a wave of peace spreading through my heart. Maybe I went through a dark chapter, but I don't need anyone patting me on the back to tell me I did the right thing. I just need to sit here under the golden sun, listening to my children's pure laughter, and I know I've held on to what matters most. And I will keep it that way. Always. Arya's story is a powerful reminder of the value of maintaining family boundaries and staying clear-headed in the face of those who try to control, manipulate, or take advantage of our kindness. In real life, many people easily allow others to intrude into their world, sacrificing the peace and safety of their loved ones out of fear of loneliness or societal pressure. But as Arya did, when we set clear limits and cherish what we have, we protect the most lasting kind of happiness, right inside our own little home. What do you think about Arya's choice? Did she do the right thing by protecting her family so fiercely? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to follow the channel to explore more meaningful stories about family life.